Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world will be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Rising Podcast for Women with your hosts, Lisa Merlo-Booth, Dee Marcotte, and Arlene Newman. And today we're going to talk about women and finances. So, and in particular, women finance and finances in relationships. Okay, everybody, so let's start with looking at what are some of the stereotypical, beliefs, thoughts, socialization, influences that continue to follow women even today in their marriages and in their journey with money. What are some of the things you see?
I think one of the things I see is to this day still, even younger women will come in, and even if they have some savvy in finances and their own finances and things like that, as a younger person, they never had that sort of mentoring that most men come in with, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, my dad would talk to me about, or my uncle would talk to me about how to invest, how to do this, how to do that. Yeah, the guys will sit around and talk about investing and, what's a good idea and this and that and the other thing. I don't ever hear a woman come in and say, yeah, we had a women's night, we had a great time, and we talked about how to invest money. Like, I don't hear that. It's like taboo.
Right. That's interesting. I don't see that either. I don't see, although it's a little interesting. I'm in not a mastermind. I'm in a group. It's called Mindful Millionaires, and it's led by a woman, and her name's Lisa Peterson, and she just wrote a book, Mindful Millionaires, and it's mostly women in it. So it's so refreshing to see that there are so many women in that group who are really like, I want to learn about money, I want to manage it, I want to do it, and that's like just a very separate subgroup, right? In my practices, I still see women largely abdicating financial responsibility to, if they're in a heterosexual relationship, to the men. And the men are making the financial decisions. The men are setting the budgets. The women are like, whatever. And I'm still seeing that. Do you guys see that?
Yes, absolutely. And especially women that don't work.
Yes.
Yes.
It's amplified when they don't work, and they feel they think about it as being his money.
Yes. Still, we're in
still
2021, and women are still, or if the women are the stay-at-home moms, they or stay-at-home domestic engineers, right? I like to say, right? They feel guilty about spending money. Some of them are still on quote unquote allowances set forth by their husband. Some of their husbands still talk about my money. Why are you spending my money on that? Or it's really fascinating to me that we've come so far, and yet we really haven't come far at all around this. I'm always surprised by that. And yet I have women who are the primary breadwinners in my office, and whose husbands are not working, and the women aren't giving them an allowance, right? So it's definitely, I'm still feeling this control piece, regardless of who's the primary breadwinner.
Yes.
Largely the control piece is the men. If they're the primary breadwinner, they're the ones who are often moving in control, but I'm not seeing that so much with the women when they're the primary breadwinners. What are you guys seeing with that?
It's interesting that you say you don't find it the other way. I have a lot of couples that I do see that power control thing. Whoever is making the money seems to do that, especially if someone's staying at home, where the concept of if you're at home, I think what happens is for the person who's out working in the outside world, well, and maybe it's different now. I don't know that we had the pandemic, but it's kind of like you don't do anything all day because it's like you're at home. And so it's like, I think that the mindset is it's like me on the weekend, I can do something or not do something or, that kind of thing. And so I still see some of that. What did you spend money for, on that for, we can't afford that, but I can determine we're going to go on a vacation, or like that power about, I get to make the decisions about the money if I'm making the money or the more money.
Well, that's good to see, because I'm not seeing the women do that. I guess that equal opportunity is good in a kind of dysfunctional, disturbing way.
Right.
But Arlene, what do you see?
Yeah, I don't see what Dee sees. I see more of the kind of traditional perspective where the man gets the say whether the woman is working or not. Somehow the man has the power, and depending on the character of the man, they can become extremely controlling about it and kind of one up about it and demeaning what the woman is providing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things I'm hearing is the language, which some of the articles I read in terms of men and women in these heterosexual relationships, the idea being, but it can be in, in gay lesbian relationships too, where one person talks as if I'm the decider.
Yeah.
You can spend money on that. You cannot spend money on that. Right. And the other person on the other side, heterosexually, usually the woman, goes, oh,
right.
And often may not even have any idea of how much money we have, kind of thing. So I think there is a lot of that, or women tending to do more of like, well, can I go buy a dress, or can I, so there's this acting and asking when it's really supposed to be our money. And so that, I think, sets up this idea too.
Oh, so true. Okay. I'm like grimacing.
I know. Like, yeah, don't do that.
So, yeah. One of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast, The Rising for Women, is because we don't even realize all of the unconscious messaging that we've been raised with our entire lives. And so sad to say that girls are still being raised with, like, they try to say, oh, our generation is different. They're not. I mean, like, I think there are some things that they're doing better, and so much of this, because it's in our culture and on TV and in magazines, and there's such subliminal messaging around just women and men knowing it more, and how women just subconsciously like go along. Okay. They're so excited, they're engaged, and he's like, okay, well, we shouldn't spend our money this way. Okay. And it becomes like, women, you have to stop that shit. Like, you gotta stop that knee jerk. Okay. That knee jerk, let's just go along. I don't want to upset him. Or if you're in a gay relationship, a lesbian relationship, I often see that in the lesbian relationships, there's one person who tends to be more of the controller, the blatant, and the other one just kind of goes along as well, And so I really think it's important that from the very, very start, before you ever get married, before you ever start locking finances or whatever, that you have to have conversations. And your conversation isn't, hey, what do you think about money? Okay, that sounds good. The conversation is, what do you think about money? This is what I think about money. Oh, I disagree with that. Let's come up with something new. Let's try to figure this out. Because women, if you're not mindful, before you know it, you will agree, and then you create a pattern in your marriage that becomes really difficult to change later on. So for all of you guys who are in dating relationships or thinking about moving in or thinking about getting married, you have to have financial conversations, and you have to fight for what you believe, and you have to listen to what they believe, and you got to find a way to combine it, not just like Dee said, just kind of like, oh, okay. That doesn't work.
Right.
You know what, Lisa, you're talking about fight for what you believe, but first you have to also look at what you believe and whether you want to believe what you believe, because what you believe may be a carryover that you may not want to live that way anymore.
So true. So true. I still have women today, and I don't, they say, I do want a man to take care of me. I do want to, him to be the provider. I do want him to ... And what I would say to that is, be careful. The divorce rate is 50%, right? So if you want him to be the provider for as long as you're married, and then you have nothing, and you have, you really have to be thinking about, even if you're going to be the stay-at-home mom, that's okay, but be educated, be aware, be, know what's going on and have the facts. Don't just sit back. If anything, I would hope that, women of all ages now have learned from our parents' generation what they went through and where our moms got in trouble or our grandmothers got in trouble or whatever. And, start really slowing down and deciding, like Arlene said, check your opinions, all that unconscious, I think men should be the provider, I do want to be taken care of, or whatever it is you're thinking. Stop and be like, wait a second, do I really think that? Or have I just been taught that so long that it's just kind of, I just go along with it? And what are the pros and cons for me thinking that? How does that impact me when I think that? And when I do think that, how do I act that out? How does that serve me when I play out this idea that I want him to be the provider, for example?
That's the cost. I always ask, what's the cost for going along with this? What does it cost you?
Yeah.
Are you willing to pay that?
Right. Well, and especially when in a 2017 study, 71% of adults still think it's very important for a man to be able to support a family financially, to be a good husband or partner. I mean, that is a scary percentage.
That is. And let's look at the flip side of that. So 71% believe that men should be the primary provider and that they should be taking care of their family. So my heart goes out to men and women on this, and to children on this, because I know all three of us can give example after example after example of men and women who have come into our offices, and this has been one of the primary issues, that the man is working all the time. He's not home with the family, and the men will say, well, it's my job to provide for the family. I'm doing what I should do.
Right.
And the women also believed in that. It's not like the man didn't just, make this up himself. And so, but then, you can't have that and have a healthy, fun, family life. It's a setup. And I think that, we have to really slow down and be like, okay, like Arlene said, you want the man to be the provider. What's the to that? What is the cost to that? There's a lot of costs. And that doesn't mean that you can't be a stay-at-home mom or whatever. It's just really think about what you're going into, and think about if he's going to be the primary, you know, breadwinner, or you are, whoever's going to be the primary breadwinner, that doesn't mean that you both don't still say, and here are the parameters for our family. That doesn't mean you're going to work 90-hour work weeks. Like, let's slow down and be like, what kind of family life do we want? What kind of marriage do we want? And what kind of income are we hoping for? And how do we, you know, mesh those? How do we get those to work? Because if you don't, then you have somebody who's gone all the time working. You're a single mom or a single dad at home, basically. The kids don't get one of their parents, and there's a huge burden on one. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not without its consequences. So you really have to slow it down and think about it.
I also thought it was interesting that, you know, a lot of times I'll get younger people who are like, no, our finances are separate. This isn't going to be a problem, blah, blah, blah. And then I say, well, what are you going to do when you have children? And they're like, well, it'll be fine. I'm like, well, tell me how it's going to be fine, because they just assume it. I'm like, everything I read was, you have to have conversations, have conversations, have conversations. And like you said, Lisa, a conversation isn't like, well, we're only going to spend this much, and the other person goes, okay.
Right.
It's a conversation about that. But a lot, even in terms of, as you were saying early on, like even with dating, like that you get to say things like, great, I'd like to meet you for coffee. How do you generally handle the bill?
Right.
Like, you know, where,
or I'd like to go Dutch.
Yeah. You know, that, you know, but I still have a lot of women who think, well, he asked, so he should pay. You know, I'm like, well, you guys need to talk about that.
Right. And then they think the man is cheap if he doesn't.
Right, exactly.
But then some men feel like, and if I paid, you owe me something.
Exactly.
So it's really convoluted, and you know, you can't be, you know, I want equality and I'm an empowered woman and I want this, and then you like set this up. Everything more and more conversations. And to Arlene's point, before you have the conversation, get clarity around what the hell you want. What do you think? What do you believe? Do I like going Dutch? Do I want the man to pay? Do I want to pay? Where am I and why? And at what point does it change? And, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Where did I get this idea?
Yeah,
exactly.
It's really a deep dive into where did I get this idea, and is that really my belief, or is it just something that, because that's what I saw my grandmother do and my mother do, and da 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 da, and so now this is what I do. Like, my grandmother knew nothing about money, zero.
Well, historically, you know, this is a great point. Historically, women weren't working. Right. So women didn't have money to go out on a date and bring, like, they couldn't pay.
Right.
And so it was just, you want to take me out and you want to eat, you got to pay, because I got no money, you know? I mean, like you said, it was 1970s before women got credit cards.
Right.
So
to believe.
Right.
It's shocking. It's like 50 years ago we're talking about.
I know, that's not that long.
Like, it's not that long ago.
So they did not have money. And now it's very different. You know, I was reading the percentage, 40% of households have female breadwinners, 40%. And so, and it's I didn't get the exact percentage of how many households are dual income households, but most households are dual income now. And so, and if you're dating, most men and women, you know, are both working. So they both have finances to be able to take each other out on dates, or to be able to spend their own or whatever. Whereas, you know, decades ago, it just wasn't even an option for women, unless they're going to get money from their dad. And I'm pretty sure no father was going to give a daughter money to take out a boy.
Right. For
That
sure.
was not happening.
I remember my grandmother, she would skim off the grocery money
Yeah.
to have any money of her own for a long time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, we've come a long way. We
haven't.
And we haven't. Exactly. I would say we have enough research from the past to learn from the past. And women really, one of the things, and I think this is true no matter what topic we're talking about in this podcast, is you have to really slow down and check your assumptions. You got to slow down and you got to see where, like, wait, what do I believe? I got to stop just like unconsciously going along.
Mm-hmm.
What are my thoughts here?
Mm-hmm. Which is really that, like, was a big thing in the part about dating, which was things like saying, you know, well, whichever way you go, like, I'm really redoing my budget right now. How do you work in a budget or not? You know, or I don't ever work in a budget. How does that work for you? Or what kinds of things do you splurge on? And what kind of, you know, it's like all those kinds of conversations. And I think they don't only happen. I mean, if you haven't done them in dating, now you have to do them in your committed relationship about, you know, about that. And we're also talking as if there's only two people. There could be more.
Right. I was, you know, I can't even imagine.
Mind blowing.
I mean, I can't even imagine if you're in polyamory, like how you're doing that. But that's only 4% of the population. Right. So I'm gonna.
We're not gonna do that.
We're not gonna do that right now. It's too complicated. Even
right. But I do. Let's look a little bit about different options, and we're going to do a little bit of like do's and don'ts, right? And so let's start with the do's. And in terms of the do's, like what are some options we're seeing that we've seen work with couples when it comes to money? And let's start with some of those. And I just want to start this off with, I know in baby boomers, let me just go, there's like baby boomers, 13% of baby boomers keep their money totally separate. 11% of Gen X's keep their money totally separate. And 28% of millennials keep their money separate. So millennials are starting a new trend of they're getting married, but they're keeping their money separate. When, you know, the older you are, the greater the chance was that you were totally pooling all of your money. Once you got married, all of your money was being pooled. And then in between, there's a joint account, two separate accounts. There's like different things. Now, a lot of the millennials are keeping their money totally separate. So let's talk about some of those options just in general, because I've had a lot of couples and it's run the gamut around how they have done with money and where the problems come up. So what are some options that you all have seen that are option, you know, pretty viable? You've seen them work.
Even though I have a few that work, but not smoothly. There's still issues around it, because I think money is a challenging subject on many levels.
Yeah.
But I think the talking, like Dee, talking about having conversations, I think to be able to have the conversations is a start, and not to avoid talking about it. There's a lot of avoidance around money that I see.
Okay, so let's throw out options, whether they're going to have problems or not problems, but let's at least give them options, because some don't even know where to start. So one option, of course, is you can throw all your money, pool all of your money together. What yours is mine, you know, what's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. We come up with a budget together around, you know, whatever that a total budget. You know, this is how much we want to go to savings. This is how much we want, you know, for groceries. This is how much we each get for spending, right? And everything comes out of the same thing. You have joint credit cards, joint accounts. One of the things you want to do with that is if there has to be a certain amount where we can spend however we want, as long as it's within the budget. And if we have a big purchase, you set the amount for that purchase. So if either one, so when my husband and I were first married, we had no money. And so we each were allowed $25 a week for like our just whatever play money. But then you can set like $100. If it's going to be over $100, you need to talk to your partner and say, hey, you know, I want to do this. Were you okay with that? And they have to do the same. And it's totally equal. Not one person is asking where the other one isn't, right? So that's one way that, you know, one option. What's another option you guys have seen?
I think the one you talked about where there's like the joint account, but everyone then has their own account. I think I've seen that one work the best for the most part for people. But I think though the idea is that, like you said, there has to be a certain amount that for, you know, whatever is considered bigger purchases for you, you know, and your amount that is kind of like, okay, we're going to talk those through, you know, and determine, you know, how do we, like just this morning, we had a conversation with our kids about like, okay, so in 3 years, the kids will be at good ages. Let's plan a vacation to Disney World or, you know, Disneyland. And let's talk about the things we want to be sure that we have so that we have 3 years to plan for that, you know, kind of thing. So it's those kinds of things that also we have to plan for something.
Yeah. Okay. And in that, this is where I've seen the trickiness with this. You have your own personal accounts and you have a joint account. That joint account, you guys have to decide how much are we putting in that joint account every month? How does that work? Right. And there's lots of different ways to do that. It can be that each of us puts in a certain amount every month. If you both are making approximately equal salaries,
right?
If one's making a significantly more salary, what you do in that joint account, you can put, okay, we're each going to put 50% of our salary into this joint account, and then the other 50 goes into our personal accounts, or you can do 75% goes into the joint, 25, however you want to, you know, work that percentage. And then you have to also decide what is that joint account is all the bills and the mortgage and everything else. But also like what else is coming from that joint account and what are you doing for personal accounts?
Yes. That's where I see the snafu come the most.
That's where the snafu is going to come. Yeah. Right. Right.
You know, kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's a big one.
Okay. So those are two.
I think I really think it's important that then whatever agreement, so first of all, we're talking about, you need to make agreements. You can't just have expectations. You need to make agreements.
And follow them.
Write them down.
Write them down. That's great.
Yes.
Because
the contract, right? Like a business contract.
Right.
I don't know about other people, but it's like my husband and I would come up with things, we'd write it down. And 2 weeks later, we have two totally different versions of what that was. It doesn't have anything to do with the agreement.
Right. Right. So, and if you're having a lot of financial conversations, you can forget. You know, it's like, oh shit, I forgot about that. Sorry. You know, and yeah, absolutely. The other thing is keeping it totally separate. I have yet to see that work. That's one approach I have not seen work at all. And because what happens, here's where I've seen that get tricky, and couples in my office are arguing about it because now they're going on a trip together, and well, he paid for dinner on Friday night, but I paid on Saturday, and the restaurant I went to was like 3 times the cost. And so it it starts to feel like you're not married and you're not really a team and you're not really a couple, and they split the bills like, okay, you're going to take this bill, I'll take this bill. I have not seen that work. So I don't know.
I've seen that to the point of, you ate my cottage cheese.
Yeah.
Are you going to pay me for that?
That's being roommate. As far as I'm concerned, that's just like, we're roommates.
Roommates. That's what it reminds me of. My first roommate, you know?
Yes.
You drank my grapefruit juice.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I have not seen that work. I personally wouldn't recommend doing a 100% separate. I think that no matter what, you should have some type of joint account if you guys are married, so that there's something you're building towards. There's something, you're not getting into this nitpicky little things. You don't have to put tons of money in that joint account, but I think you need something about something that we are doing together, something that we're team working on. And that's right. So. And
one of the things I might say as we're talking about this, you know, I think because culturally we have not, you know, usually we don't have the mentor who tells us about how to invest money or how to think about money or what to do with money or any of those kinds of things. And so, you know, these days, listen to podcasts, you know, read.
What a good idea. Never would have occurred to me.
I mean, you don't even have to read a book, you know, you can, you can listen to things so that as a woman in particular, you feel more confident about going into the conversation rather than just, well, I'd like this, you know, and he's like, well, blah, 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 you know, and then often I think we're intimidated, you know, and that kind of stuff. And then we go ahead and just agree to whatever, rather than, you know, now I have some information. I feel some confidence in being able to even have a conversation about money, much less which thing to pick.
Right. That's such a great suggestion. There's so many podcasts. There are, you know, blogs, there are, you know, books, and women are writing them. And there are a lot of women who are in, you know, financial experts. And you just, you know, little at a time, just learn a little bit here, a little bit there, talk to your friends.
Well, and another thing is, as a couple, go to a financial advisor.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, have someone who can maybe intervene in some of those cultural messages. Right.
And some of your conversations, like some of the financial conversations are going to be hard, but some of them are going to be fun. Don't forget the fun ones. Like, okay, what do we want to do? Like, Dee, you're just talking about, okay, we want to do a trip in 3 years. Okay, how much do we want to save each month? And then like you actually get to watch that grow, which is exciting. And then you go on the trip and it's no stress because you have all of it. It's already paid for. You're like, woohoo, you know? And so come up with goals together, fun goals. You can also come up, look, we got to reduce our, you know, our debt. Let's come up with a plan. How about we do this? And then we can celebrate once we, you know, pay off this credit card or whatever. When you're working as a team together, it actually can bring you closer and it can be much more fun. And one of the reasons why you get married is because you don't want to be doing everything on your own. You want to be working as a team, as a partner with somebody. So you need to be starting this from day one, these conversations, and they're going to happen again and again and again. They're just going to be a part of your marriage or your relationship, you know, if you're in a long-term relationship.
Yeah. So remember that it's a partnership. That's not the conventional, the old-fashioned way of viewing marriage. And you have to kind of update yourself.
Right. And it's a partnership, regardless of whether you are working or not, whether you're bringing home the money or not, whether you're the sole earner or your partner's the sole earner. It is still a partnership. And I am so tired of women, and now we have more men who are stay-at-home dads. But I'm so tired of women in particular saying this. I don't hear this from stay-at-home dads, which is so Gosh, the irony is so interesting. But stay-at-home moms, you know, well, it's their money. I feel bad. I don't, you know, I'm not working. Are you kidding me? My husband and I had the fortune when our kids were little, I was home 3 days a week with them and he was home 2 days a week. And we each, after 2 years of doing that, we were like, it is so much easier going to work. like
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't even tell you, my husband, he'll be the first one to say it, right? And me too. We're like, oh my gosh. And when the person would come home from work, we were like, tag, you're it, you know? And so for those of you who are stay-at-home moms and are thinking that I feel bad, no way. Your job is the hardest job in the world, hands down. And so don't diminish that. And
Right.
and dads too, if you're a stay-at-home dad, don't diminish that. The money that you are saving your family for doing this, and just the emotional piece is humongous. So do not see your partner's money as his or her money. That's a bunch of BS and it's very damaging. So if you're the one who's controlling the money because you're making it and you feel like it's your money, you are way off on this. And if you're the one on the other side who's not making it and you feel like you don't have a right to it, you're way off. Let's just kind of do down the line some do's. Women want to, be showing up with a grounded, powerful strength around money in their marriage and in their lives. What are some do's that they need to do? Talk. We said,
talk, exactly.
like
not be afraid to talk.
And set a time to talk.
Set a time to talk.
Not in the middle of an argument is this a time to in the money, da, 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 da. So setting times.
Yep. Get clarity. What do you want? What are your goals? What are you okay with, not okay with? Okay. At the beginning,
the vision. What's the vision? I really like that wording.
Yeah, come up with a vision together. What are you working towards? And come up, you have to figure out, this is where couples, it can be very tough for couples, because you might have one, like, what's your money philosophy? Are you thinking, like, hey, I think that, money is good and you want to be able to use it to enjoy life? Or are you thinking very frugally, like, no, you need to save it and you never know when you're going to lose it? Like, and that is can be a big problem with couples. It can be very, very hard. And what I would say with that, what you want to do is make sure that neither one of you is leading from an extreme point of view or agreeing with an extreme point of view. And that's going to be hard, because if you're the one with the extreme point of view, you're not going to see it, your partner will. And you need to trust your partner. Like, you need to tune in and be like, wait, am I being extreme? Let me slow that down. And so you want to, like, what is your money philosophy, and how do you kind of make sure that both of you are working with a realistic, healthy, not an extreme, money philosophy? That's important.
I think it's an important place to remember, this is an equal to place. No one is kind of like, I know everything and it has to be my way, or, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. Right. And, I have to just do whatever you do. So I think it's having that equal idea.
Yes. And that's, even if you feel like you don't know everything, you step in as an absolute equal, because you are. And if your partner doesn't know everything, you treat them as an absolute equal, because they are. And so you give them information, and, you search information, whatever you need to do, but don't play small because you feel like you don't know enough, or don't get, grandiose because you feel like you know so much. That's going to hurt your partnership no matter what.
And knowing what everything is. Know what all the accounts are, know the passwords, know where to find that information.
Yeah.
All of that.
Great. The other thing is, set a budget and honor it. I see too many women who are not honoring their budgets, or too many men who are not. What's happening, you know, I can't believe how many couples I've had where somebody has literally like bought a boat without talking to their partner. They bought a car. I'm like, what? Like, you know, or sometimes in a couple, one person owns a company. And so they're like, oh, well, I'm doing it under the company. And then they don't let their partner, they're like, no, you can't buy that. But this person's buying like endless amounts of money. You cannot do that. You don't get to be, you know, Mr. Scrooge over here, and then you get to do whatever you want over there. That's going to lead to resentment. And at some point it's going to burn out your marriage, regardless. I don't care who's doing it on what side. So create a budget, a joint budget, and follow it. And if you don't follow it, you're off, not your partner, you're off. If you didn't agree with the budget and you're not following it because you don't agree with it, you're still off, because don't agree with a budget that you don't agree with. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Okay.
And if you find that it's not working for some reason, then you have to come back and have the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, like
again and again,
negotiate this or talk through this again in a different way.
Right.
It just seems to me that it's so important that you educate yourself about money, so that you don't feel intimidated about talking about it. You don't use not knowing as an excuse to not have the conversations. Because I think the conversation is key, but you have to feel like you can have it, that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And you know, if you're not sure that what you're asking is okay, if you're worried or you feel uncomfortable, there is no reason now for you not to explore. There, you have at your fingertips. Ask a question. Is it normal to have somebody, you know, do this with money? Or is this a reasonable ask with money? And you will get endless, you know, articles and opinions, and then search through them. Make sure you're reading reliable sources, you know, and then figure out, okay, well, let me like check me. What is it that I want to do on this? There's no reason for you to not, you know, educate yourself on this if you're feeling insecure about something. Okay, so let's talk about some of the warning signs that set up your money many ways, and there's, you know, there's a whole gambit around it. But what are some warning signs that this isn't okay? What can women pay attention to around money?
The first one is, oh, don't worry about it, I have it handled.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
So whenever you're asking for more information, they don't want to give it to you. It's like they're patting the puppy dog. Yeah. No, that is a warning sign. When they talk about their money as though it's their money, when they talk about your money, the family money, as though it's their money. Why are you spending my money like that? I work hard for this and you're just blowing it away, right? Now, here's the caveat to that. Don't just go on wild spending sprees. You know, that's not okay. I've had, you know, clients who have spent like thousands of dollars every month, again and again and again. That's disrespecting your family. That's just harsh. That's just not okay. That's not responsible. You don't get to do that.
And you have to look at why you're doing that. You have to really explore yourself as to what's driving that kind of behavior, because it is destructive.
A lot of times it's because I'm pissed off because you are being in control of the money. Absolutely. I'm not having a conversation with you about that, so I'll show you. I'm just gonna spend. Not okay.
Or you have a spending addiction, in which case you need to go to Debtors Anonymous. You need to, you know, go into Overspenders Anonymous. Like, you have to deal with that. That's just not okay. And if you're not doing that, and the person is, if you are getting nervous that, oh my gosh, I'm just spending like this normal, you know, I'm just going to buy myself a cup of coffee, and my partner is, I know he or she is going to be looking at the credit card and being like, why'd you go get coffee? that's a warning flag. You're in a controlling relationship, and that's actually a warning flag for financial abuse.
I think also in what you're saying, the idea of, oh, you're spending too much money. Well, tell me how you're thinking about that, where you're thinking about that. You just are. So if I can't tell you specifically what is worrying me, because I do think you have a spending addiction or something, that's a warning sign. You know, if they can't give you concrete information so that you can go, okay, is that off or is that not off?
Right.
Kind of thing. And you were talking about the language. I think it's also, and I think we said it before, but that idea of, if you go ahead and keep asking, can I buy this? Can I buy that? Can I buy this other thing? Then you're setting it up to basically be a teenager.
Right. Right. So you don't want to do that. It's a warning sign also, if you have to check in about everything you're spending, but they can spend whatever they want, however much they want. So they're doing big, spending, and you are just doing this, and they're micromanaging your spending. That's a warning flag. What other don'ts are there? What other red flags are there?
What are some that you see, Arlene?
I think everything that we just talked about, but I think the thing that I see the most in my office is the fear of talking about money, the fear of bringing it up, the not feeling entitled. You know, if you're making less money or not making any money, not feeling entitled to have a conversation about how the money should be spent. I would say that's the main thing that I see in all the either the couples or the individuals that I work with.
And I would wonder about that. Like, if they're afraid to bring up money, are they afraid to bring up other things? Does their partner respond, in intense ways? Is their partner unreasonable, or is this just an internal insecurity and fear themselves?
Well, I think there's a pattern in those relationships where talking about it's a conflict avoidant relationships. I would say so. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. They are afraid to talk about the conflictual things. They don't have a good way of working it through.
So women, here's the problem with avoiding conflict. When you're avoiding conflict, you can't ever resolve conflict. So the only way to resolve it is for you to eat it. You suck it up, you take it on, and then you get resentful. And then at some point over time, you get angry. And what I would say is your anger is not at your partner, your anger is at you. And so you have to look at that. A grounded, powerful strength is all about you. Listen, you have to be able to stand up for yourself when you need to. And if you're not able to do that, it is not your partner's fault for what they're doing if you're not ever calling them out on it. They're not a mind reader. And if they're okay with putting you on an allowance and you're not saying anything about it, well, implicit in your silence is acceptance.
That's right.
Right.
But part of this conditioning as well.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. What did you say, Arlene?
I'm saying that your partner is part of the conditioning as well. So unless you bring it up and say, this is not okay, but this doesn't work, they're just going to go along with whatever they came in with.
Right.
So it really is up to you to bring more awareness to what's going on and deal with the conflict.
And it is a don't if you're like, I get a lot of, well, then he's going to be angry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so right. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, you're an adult. You can, you can handle that, but that I think that's something that women do in a lot of places in this conflict avoidant thing. And so they definitely do it with money. And that is like, well, it's easier to just not make them mad or not make them mad.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, no, it isn't, for the reason you said, Lisa, is, then I'm just resentful.
Well, and, some women are like, oh, it's easier to not make them mad, so I'm going to be sneaky and I'm not going to tell them, and I'm going to go around, you know, sideways, and I'm going to blame him because if he wasn't such a jerk, I wouldn't have to do this.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. Listen, you know, women, so much of this podcast is about the world will change for women when we change how we walk in it. So I'm not saying men are going to change. I don't know what men are going to do. You don't have control over there. But if you keep shrinking and silencing and going along to get along, you can't blame men on that. You blame you with that. So if you want, you know, better control of your money, stand up for yourself. And don't do it like a bat out of hell. Don't do it like a crazy woman. Do it like you are an absolute equal. And you stand in and you own your power and you say, hey, I want to revisit our finances. They're not feeling good to me. Right? And you have that conversation again and again and again. But you cannot keep, you know, excusing your lack of standing up or your lack of speaking because of your fear that you're going to upset people. Let me just tell you, you're going to upset people. Okay. Right? Unless you are in a physically abusive relationship, you need to do it anyway. If you're in a physically abusive relationship, you need to get the hell out of the relationship. And that is a long process. And you got to get into, you know, get to work with a women's protective services, get set up there, because this man would be abusive with anybody he's with. If you're with a woman who's abusive to you, she would be abusive to anyone she's with. That has nothing to do with you. And so unless you're in that kind of relationship, you absolutely need to stand up, and you need to know that people are not going to be happy about you standing up, and that is okay. You do it respectfully, you do it with strength, but you do it. And you're going to feel better. He or she is going to feel more clarity around where you're coming from, and that's going to feel like more teamwork and more partnership.
You can't be afraid. You can't just back down, be afraid of, so he's going to be defensive or he's going to be dismissive. Yes, he might be.
Right.
And so you have to meet that too.
And be afraid, but do it anyway. You know?
Be afraid and do it anyway.
Courage.
Fear. Yes, have courage. Absolutely.
Right. You know, do not let that fear stop you. Like that's life. You know, life can be scary, but you're not going to get what you want if you don't do it.
You know, and I think we're coming up with an important thing here as you guys were as we were saying this. And then I think it's important that you have support for how are you going to speak up and be evaluative of who you're talking to. Talking to your mother may not be a good idea. Talking to all your friends who are in the same boat that you are might not be a good idea until you get some sea legs under you. Right. So I think that's the other thing, is that a lot of times women go and they talk to their friends or their mothers or their sister or whoever. Well, they have the same belief that you do. So they're just going to go, oh, just let it go or whatever. So you need some support with people who help you learn how to speak from that grounded, powerful strength.
That's such a great, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that. And women, damn, we have to stop pulling each other down with our crazy, just harmful thinking. You know, we just have to, oh no, he's going to be upset. Oh, it's not worth it. Oh, I just spend my money over here anyway. He never knows. Like, stop the shit. You got to stop that. And we need to help each other rise, not help each other like get away with things. That is not what we're looking at. And we also need to help each other rise in, you know, respectful, strong ways, not like, I am sick and tired of, you know, men being bullies. I don't want women being bullies now, be under the guise of, oh, we want everybody to be equal. No, I want a safe world. I want a respectful world. I want men to use a grounded, powerful strength just like I want women to. So let's hold each other accountable for doing this and hold each other accountable for being our best selves and for being treated like we're worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that if you're constantly advising your friends to, you know, to cower or to go ahead, just have an affair or go, you know, hide your money. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It
Not
doesn't
doing them
help
any
us.
favors. No, you're not
No.
helping.
No.
Not helping.
Mm-hmm. Well, then
Join the
you
group.
come to
I
therapy
think-
and say, well, we're not connected. And it's
Yeah,
kind of,
right.
well, yeah.
Right.
No. But it's not just all him, you know,
Right.
the other person. Mm-hmm.
What were you saying, Arlene?
I said, join a group. Find a group that can support you.
Right.
Therapy group, a support group, whatever groups are
Mastermind
available
group.
to you.
Yeah.
Right.
A
Mastermind.
mastermind group. Anything.
What is a
There's-
mastermind group, Lisa?
Mastermind group is for women in business and who want to whatever expand their business, and they often also talk about personal stuff like trying to get them more empowered, trying to get them to feel more, you know, stronger to take bigger risks in business. So there's lots of options out there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
There's,
have to do
you know,
it
coda
alone.
groups. There's like, you know,
Yes.
yeah, Al-Anon, Alcoholics Anonymous, there's coda groups, sex anon. There's so much out there now.
Mm-hmm.
Get the help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else on money, do's and don'ts?
Yeah.
And what's our challenge?
Don't hide from the subject.
Yeah.
Don't stick your head in the sand.
And don't bow down to somebody else's vision. You bring your own. Bring your own. And
Find
if you're
your
afraid
own.
that if you're like engaged and you're afraid that you're going to lose the marriage or your fiance is going to be angry because you're talking about money, guess what? You have the
Get
wrong
out.
fiance.
Get out.
Right?
Run
Take the
there.
money
rid of
and
that
go on your
fiance.
own honeymoon, you know?
Run. Take the money and run.
Right? Take the get that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's our challenge to the women first? I mean, I think we said it 1,000 times. So what's our challenge to the women?
Become aware.
Number one, become aware. Number two, get educated.
Get educated. Have conversations.
And talk and have conversations. Don't back
All right.
down. Don't be intimidated. Speak up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Have courage.
You know what I
So-
like, Lisa, is something that you say, have your own back.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody else will if you don't.
I love that. I tell it to my patients all the time. Have your
Yeah.
own back.
Yep. Okay, so challenge for women. One, like sit down with yourself, journal, get like increase your awareness. Like, how do you feel about the money? Is there anything going on in your relationship with your partner around money that doesn't feel good that you have not been speaking about? And what is it, if you had no fear, what is it that you would be saying and what is it that you want? So just get clarity before you do anything. Get clarity first, and you can journal on that. You can ask friends, you can, you know, research online, lots of things to help you get clarity. And then speak up, have the conversation, figure it out. If you need to write it out, but then go to your partner and say, hey, on Saturday, I would like for us to put time aside and I want us to talk about money. And then do it. And no matter how that conversation goes, pat yourself on the back afterwards, because it took courage to have it. And it's the first in many. So, you know, be proud of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Men, what's the challenge for men?
Be aware. Be aware of what you're bringing into this, your own kind of conditioned beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And how they're playing out. Like watch, like how are you showing up in your marriage around money? You know, what are you doing? Are you controlling it? Are you a team player in it? Are you, you know, angry at her with what she's doing with it, but not saying anything? Like just get super aware of where's money in your home, how's it playing out, and what are you doing to contribute or to hurt it?
Mm-hmm. And pay attention to your language. Are you speaking in a way that money is a joint partnership thing, or are you speaking in a way that you're the king and get to decide what happens?
So I love that. I'd like to do that challenge, make that same challenge to any of the primary breadwinners in the homes across the world. Pay attention to your language about money. Do you talk about it as though it's your money or our money? If you're talking about it as though it's your money, you are off. Every time you are off. All right. So everybody, thanks so much for listening in to the podcast. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for listening in to the video cast. If you like what you see, share it. If you have a question, ask it. And if you want to see something, suggest it. All right, you guys, take care. And here's the money habits. Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.